again, I'm Marissa Leviani, taking you through a six-part journey on project management fundamentals for youth. Now, it's time to build the real plan. A project needs a schedule, clear roles, and a realistic view of what could go wrong. Let's put those pieces together in episode 4.
Timeline and milestones of your project. The easiest way to determine the schedule is to ask these 3 questions. First, when should each task and deliverable be completed? Second, who is responsible for each deliverable and task? And third, is it realistic to complete the work in the estimated timeframe? The next part of the planning process is all around communication. It is the most powerful tool you have to ensure that all stakeholders are heard and considered throughout the duration of your project. Now, what are some of the steps for effective communication, you may ask? The first is to listen. You must focus and be patient to make sure everyone feels heard and included in the process. Make a list of all the different individuals and groups who need to both hear from you and to be heard. Be an ally. Advocate for all voices to be included in the process. Make sure you are documenting everyone's input so that you can refer to it when necessary. Create safe spaces for open dialogue so your team can feel like their opinions and their ideas matter and are heard. And also celebrate our differences. We are all different and we think differently. Encouraging each other and talk creatively together. Develop a plan that answers the following questions. What needs to be communicated? When does the information need to be distributed? Who should receive the information? All stakeholders or just some? Where should the information be distributed to? And how and in what format should the information be presented? One of the important parts of project management that a lot of people sometimes forget to follow through on is thinking about and managing risk. So what is risk as it relates to your project? Well, it's essentially what could go wrong. It's an uncertain future event which, should it occur, will have an impact on the objectives and successes of your project. Now, it's also important here to mention that risks can be positive. For example, a software update allows a milestone to be completed earlier than planned. That could be a risk, but it could also be positive in that it positively impacts the overall completion date of your project. So as you are thinking about identifying, analyzing, developing a response plan, and monitoring your risks, don't always just think of them as a negative thing. Think of them as positive potentially as well. Now, we have a table here that you can use to get some experience in going through a risk plan. So you'll see here, you'll want to, in the risk column, identify all of the risks that you could see with your project. In the impact column, you'll want to use a rating of 1 to 5, 1 being low impact and 5 being high impact, to determine what you think the impact of that particular risk will be on your project. The next column is the likelihood of the risk. So again, you can use a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a low likelihood of that risk coming to fruition, or 5 being a very high likelihood that that risk will come to pass. And then finally, you'll want to develop a mitigation strategy. So if any of these risks were to come to pass, what kind of mitigation strategy or ways might you overcome that risk to minimize it or completely erase it from your risk register? Now, this is also another opportunity for you to pause and to practice filling out a risk table similar to the one that we just saw on the last slide.
This got a little heavy. I need some time to process, as I'm sure you do too. Take time to create your plan. Make sure to fill out the risk table where you identify the risk, talk about the impact, discuss the likelihood of the risk, and come up with the potential mitigation strategy to overcome the risk. Once you've built the plan, let's keep the project moving through. Communication, progress tracking, and shared responsibility. 2 more episodes to go. See you later.